It's a very large title. We're going to look at factoring by completing the square. And the reason I'm going to do it this way is because it's a way where we can graph pretty much every major part of quadratic with really just going through one process, which is completing the square. So if we wanted to complete the square, we can obtain our, we'll talk about what the major points are. We can obtain our x-intercepts, our y-intercept, and our vertex really quickly. And I know this isn't going to fit really nice, but there you go. Right? So we can find those four pieces really quickly with just completing a square as long as we know how to do it. So here's our functions in standard form. Okay, and what we're going to do is I'm going to show you how we can go from standard. Okay, so there's our standard form. We can take it to the vertex form, which is usually what completing the square is. Okay, x minus h squared plus k. Pretty quickly, and this would be our standard form. This would be our a, our b, and our c. X plus c, x squared plus bx, and y equals that. And we'll also be able to go into our factored form really quickly by completing the square. Okay? X minus r, x minus rs. So let's talk about this process, how we can do all of these by completing the square. So the way we're going to complete the square, and some teachers, when you're just going to vertex form, we're going to rewrite the standard form here. Okay. Sometimes they tell you to just divide the first two terms by the coefficient in front of x. Okay. What we're going to do is we're actually going to common factor everything by whatever the coefficient is in front of x. So because it's 4, we're going to common factor the value of 4 out of everything in this case, okay? Which is essentially going to give us our a value. As you notice, our a value is always the same throughout all of these forms. It's going to give us 4 as our a value. And that's part of the reason we're doing this. So in our next line, we have y is equal to 4. Okay? When we divide those, we get x squared. Negative 16 divided by 4 is negative 4x. And negative 128 would be negative 32. Okay, great. So now that we've done this, usually with completing the square, the next step is to take our new b term, and we put it through a process where we call it the b, and we divide it by 2 and square it. I'm going to leave things as fractions or whole numbers depending on how this goes, just so we can be very exact. So if our b value is negative 4, that's negative 4 divided by 2 squared. Negative 4 divided by 2 is going to be negative 2 squared, which is going to give us 4. So we're going to add and subtract 4. This value is very important here. That's an addition and subtraction sign to 4. So our next line reads y is equal to, okay, we have our 4, x squared minus 4x, that still stays. We're going to add 4, and we're going to subtract 4, minus our 32 here. Okay. Now the reason we've done this is because here and here we've created a perfect square trinomial. Okay, so we can factor that by just square rooting the first and last term and taking the operation from our other b term here. And what we're going to do also is we're going to combine our last two terms. Okay, so we have y is equal to, we still have this 4. Okay, I'll still write this out. We'll combine the last two. So x squared minus 4x plus 4, and that would become negative 36. Okay. I'm going to factor just this part, okay? So if you notice, I'm just going to factor this part. Still going to be all within the brackets, okay? I won't have taken anything outside of the brackets. And it's a little different from how some completing the squares are done. So when we factor that, like I said before, square root first, last, and we take the term in here, and we're left with x subtract square root of 4 is 2. Okay, so there's our 2 squared. Okay, and all of this is still within brackets. We still have the negative 36 here. Okay, so all within brackets. Now, this is where we can go to our vertex form. We can go to vertex here really quickly, and we'll rewrite it. And in this way, we'll go to our factored form. Okay, so we'll show how you can go two different routes here. So for our vertex form, what we're going to do is we take our 4, And we're going to take this 30, negative 36, and going to bring it outside of the bracket. And when we do that, we have to multiply by this common factor we took out, or the coefficient in front, which is 4. So we have x minus 2 squared, still the 2 in blue, okay? And negative 36 times 4, and we bring that out, we're going to get negative 4 by 6 is 24, carry to 2, negative 144, okay? So here is our vertex form when completing the square. Now, the factored way, or the way we're going to get the factor form, we're going to continue from this step. So this was a really key step. We still have the 4. What I'm going to do is I'm going to find the square root of 36. Okay, when we come down here, so in blue, we're going to find the square root of 36. That negative is going to stay. So we still have our following bracket here. We have our x minus 2 squared. What happened there? And we square root 36. So when I square root it, it's just 6 squared, okay? So that's actually going to be really important for what we're doing here. What I've just created, and if you know your factoring very, very well, is we've created, so this is a difference of squares now. So we have a difference of squares. And in the difference of squares, just to give you kind of a quick example, something like, oh, maybe x subtract 9. We can square root both terms. We square root the first and the last term. And when we write it in two sets of brackets, we write the square root of the first in both, square root of the last in both, so 3 and 3, and we just put an addition and a subtraction sign. Well, that's what we have here. This is our first term. We can square root it, and we know what the square root is. It's just x minus 2. And this is our second term. The square root is just 6. So we get y is equal to 4. And when we write our two brackets, okay, the first part, okay, is x minus 2. That's the first term. That's the square root of the first term, x minus 2 in both. And the second term, the square root of 6 squared, is just 6. So we'll write that in purple here. So we just write 6 in both. And like we said, we just put an addition and a subtraction sign. So we add and subtract 6. So we'll have to simplify these brackets, but this will actually take us right to our factored form. So we have 4. Negative 2 plus 6 gives us x plus 4. And over here, negative 2 minus 6 is x minus 8. And there's our factored form. So we've now, in this one process, we've built 3 forms very quickly. We have our standard form, and this is our y-intercept, negative 128. We have our vertex form at 2 and negative 144. And we have our factor form, which gives us x-intercepts at negative 4 and positive 8. If we quickly take a look over here, that's what we have. Here's the original. It has a x-intercept at negative 4 and 8, y-intercept at negative 128, and a vertex at 2 and negative 144, like we said. Our standard form, or sorry, our factor form was x plus 4, x minus 8, drew it right above, and our vertex form was 4 x minus 2 squared minus 144, I believe. And there you go. You see they all just kind of overlap each other. Perfect.